Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're getting straight into a really difficult story.
Yeah, a truly tragic event from late April 2025.
The car crash in Chatham, Illinois. A vehicle driven by Marianne Akers struck the YNOT Outdoors after-school center.
And the outcome was devastating. 4 people lost their lives.
So our goal here in this deep dive is really to understand the known facts as they were reported in, say, early May 2025.
Exactly. And we'll be focusing specifically on the investigation into whether the driver might have suffered a medical emergency.
It's just one of those incidents that really grabs you, isn't it?
Absolutely.
A car travels, what, nearly a quarter mile, apparently, without steering or braking, and crashes into a building full of kids.
Yeah, the immediate question is just how? What could possibly cause that?
It raises so many questions right off the bat.
And we should stress, our information comes from those initial news reports, official statements, right after the event.
Right, early May 2025.
The investigation was very much active then. No final conclusions had been reached. It's important context.
Okay, let's set the scene. Chatham, Illinois. That's near Springfield, right?
Correct, near Springfield. And we're talking about a Monday afternoon, April 28th, 2025 is the reported date.
At the YNOT Outdoors Center, YNOT stands for Youth Needing Other Things.
That's right, just a regular afternoon in an after-school program, kids doing activities, getting care.
Until this awful event, can you walk us through how it happened based on those early reports?
So the car, driven by Marianne Akers, it left a road nearby.
Okay.
But the striking part is the distance. Reports estimated it traveled about 1,300 feet across a field.
1,300 feet, that's huge.
It is. And investigators specifically noted no apparent attempt to alter its direction.
Just straight across.
Apparently so. Then it crossed another road and went directly through the east wall of the YNOT building.
Oh my God. Hitting a building, the force must have been incredible.
Tragically, yes. And it didn't stop there.
It went through.
It continued right through the building, hitting people inside, possibly some just outside as well.
Unbelievable.
Then it exited through the west wall, finally stopping after hitting a pole and a fence.
What consequences?
Yeah.
Just heartbreaking. 4 young people.
Yes. Rylee Britton, 18, from Springfield, and then 3 children from Chatham itself. Ainsley Johnson, 8 years old.
Oh, just kids.
And Kathryn Corley and Alma Buhnerkempe, both only 7.
7 years old.
Yeah. And beyond those terrible losses, 6 other children were injured too.
And the driver, Marianne Akers.
She's 44. Physically, reports said she was uninjured, but she was taken for a medical evaluation immediately.
Okay. When something like this happens, you automatically think about the driver, impairment, recklessness.
That's always the first line of inquiry, naturally.
But what did the initial reports say about her?
Well, indications were that Marianne Akers was cooperating fully with the authorities right from the start.
Okay, that's significant. And the toxicology, that must have been a key piece early on.
Hugely significant. The preliminary toxicology screens came back negative.
Negative for alcohol.
Drugs, negative for alcohol, and reportedly a comprehensive panel of controlled substances.
Wow. Okay, so that really shifts things, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. It moves the focus away from impairment towards,
Well,
other possibilities.
which brings us to the medical emergency idea.
Exactly. Around May 1st, the Illinois State Police Director, Brendan Kelly, made a statement.
What did he say?
He said, and I'm quoting loosely here, that some evidence has been developed indicating the possibility of a medical emergency.
Okay, possibility.
Yes, he was very clear it was not conclusive at that stage. But it definitely signaled a major direction for the investigation.
And wasn't there also a statement from Marianne Akers' lawyer around this?
Yes, her attorney, W. Scott Hankin, came forward.
And he mentioned something specific.
He stated that his client, Mrs. Akers, had suffered a seizure of some type just before the crash happened.
The seizure.
Though he also noted at that time the specific cause or nature of that seizure wasn't yet clear.
So if that's the theory, a seizure, some kind of medical event, how do investigators actually try to confirm that? What are the steps?
It involves several different angles. First, they'd need to look into her medical history.
Right, assuming they get legal permission or consent?
Correct. They'd be looking for any known conditions like epilepsy, a history of seizures, anything like that.
And isn't there a requirement in Illinois about reporting conditions like that if you drive?
Yes. Illinois law requires drivers to report conditions that could impair driving ability, including seizure disorders. So that's part of the context.
Okay, medical history. What else? The car itself.
Definitely. The vehicle's event data recorder, the EDR, or black box as people call it.
What can that tell them?
A lot, potentially. It records data like vehicle speed, Brake application, steering inputs, accelerator position.
Right up to the moment of impact?
Exactly. In the seconds leading up to the crash,
Yeah.
it could show if there was any driver input braking, swerving, or if the data is consistent with the driver being, well, incapacitated.
So a lack of braking or steering would fit the medical emergency theory.
It could, yes. It helps build that picture.
What about people who saw it happen? Witnesses?
Crucial. They'd be re-interviewing witnesses, looking for specific details.
Like what?
Did anyone see the driver before the crash? Did she look slumped over? Was the driving erratic in a way that suggested distress, not just speed or distraction? Those nuances matter.
And her own medical evaluation after the crash.
That's the other key piece. The results from the hospital, any tests they ran immediately afterwards.
Could that show evidence of a recent seizure, for example?
It might, depending on the type of event and the tests performed. It all feeds into the investigation.
And when you tie that back to the initial description, 1,300 feet, no apparent attempt to alter direction.
Right. If someone suddenly loses consciousness or control due to a seizure, that observation, it starts to make a grim kind of sense.
Yeah, it paints a very different picture than, say, drunk driving.
Completely different.
Yeah.
Which leads us to the legal side.
Okay. So, as of early May 2025, you mentioned no charges have been filed.
Correct. Marianne Akers wasn't charged, wasn't in custody. That reflects the ongoing investigation into this medical possibility.
Because Illinois law actually allows for a defense based on a medical emergency?
Yes, it's often called the medical emergency defense or sometimes sudden medical emergency.
How does that work?
Basically, if a driver suffers a sudden, unforeseen medical event that causes a complete loss of control, it can be a defense against criminal charges like reckless homicide.
Okay, but sudden and unforeseen sound like key words there.
Absolutely critical. It can't just be any medical issue.
Right.
The episode has to be sudden. It has to cause that complete loss of control, not just impaired judgment, but total inability to drive.
And the unforeseen part.
That's maybe the most crucial element legally.
Yeah.
The driver must have had no prior knowledge or warning that such an event was likely.
So if someone knew they had, say, uncontrolled epilepsy and drove anyway, that's different.
Very different. That could potentially be seen as negligence or even recklessness, depending on the circumstances. The defense hinges on it being truly unexpected.
Which is why her medical history is so vital for the state's attorney.
It's central to determining potential criminal liability. Did she know, or should she reasonably have known, that she was at risk of such an event while driving?
But even if no criminal charges are filed, that's not the end of the legal story, is it?
No, not at all. It's really important to distinguish criminal liability from civil liability.
Okay.
Even without criminal charges, the families of the victims, those injured, they can still file civil lawsuits.
For wrongful death, for injuries.
Exactly. And the standard of proof is different in civil courts. Generally, preponderance of the evidence, not beyond a reasonable doubt. So a lack of criminal charges doesn't preclude civil action.
This whole situation, especially with this medical question mark hanging over it, it really brings up some bigger, tougher questions, doesn't it?
It really does. It makes you think about, well, the fragility of health,
Yeah.
how suddenly things can change.
That anyone could potentially have an unknown condition.
Right. Or even a known one that's thought to be controlled. It highlights the whole issue of driver health screening, self-reporting. It's complex.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the emotional impact. When a tragedy happens and the cause isn't clear-cut negligence or malice.
It creates such a difficult situation for everyone involved, especially the community trying to process it. How do you grieve? How do you find answers or assign responsibility when it might be down to an unforeseen medical event?
It's profoundly ambiguous.
It is, and even the investigation itself, relying on medical records, interpreting black box data, but there can be limitations, ambiguities there too. Sometimes definitive proof is hard to come by.
You mentioned the community, Chatham. The impact must have been just devastating.
Oh, absolutely. Losing young lives, especially at a place like an after-school center, a place meant for safety, reports describe just deep shock and sorrow.
I imagine there were vigils, memorials.
Yes, community vigils, spontaneous memorials grew, a real outpouring of support for the families affected, for the injured children.
It's hard to fathom the trauma for the families, the friends, but also the first responders arriving at that scene.
Unimaginable. You saw condolences coming from officials like Governor Pritzker. But yeah, the toll on first responders in these situations is immense.
We should take a moment again to remember the names of those who were lost.
Yes. Rylee Britton, 18, and Ainsley Johnson, 8, Kathryn Corley, 7, and Alma Buhnerkempe, Also 7.
Such young lives. Okay, so wrapping up this deep dive based on that early May 2025 information, what are the main takeaways?
Well, the core points are: the investigation was still very much active. 4 people tragically died, 6 others injured when Marianne Akers' car hit the YNOT Center.
No criminal charges filed at that point.
Correct. Toxicology was negative for alcohol and drugs. And a major focus, perhaps the major focus, had become the possibility of a medical emergency, like a seizure.
But still under investigation, not confirmed.
Exactly. Still being actively investigated.
And the final decision on any potential charges rests with the state's attorney based on the full Illinois State Police investigation.
That's the process, yes. It's just a case layered with tragedy and these really complex questions about cause and responsibility.
It really does underscore how unpredictable life can be, these hidden vulnerabilities.
It does. And finding closure is so difficult in circumstances like these. It really emphasizes the need for, compassion, a thorough investigation, and that community support we talked about.
Our thoughts are certainly with all the families affected by this.
Absolutely.
It definitely leaves you thinking, doesn't it? How should our legal system, and maybe society more broadly, handle these incredibly painful cases where a sudden medical issue might be the root cause of immense tragedy?
Right, yeah.
It's a tough one.